SSSQ is a weekly look at fantasy players that are underappreciated enough to consider the potential raids you should leave on your starting and bench. We also identify escape candidates to keep in your squad and players you can safely cut. See our Week 9 lineup for the rest of your roster decisions. You can also listen to the Week 9 preview episode of the Score Fantasy Football podcast. Start. Aaron Rodgers, Packers. Against Lions. John Fisher /sports/. It's been a tough season for Rodgers, who failed to score 17 fantasy points in a game for the first 8 weeks. Fortunately for him and the Packers, help is on the way in the form of the Lions' defense. Detroit was the second easiest matchup for rival passers-by. More specifically, DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. In games of 5 where at least one of Brown was healthy, the Lions found themselves in a shootout, delivering weekly fantasy endings of QB4, QB5, QB9, QB2, and most recently QB1. Comprehensive. Rodgers will get a boost if top receiver Allen Lazard bounces back from the shoulder injury that caused him to miss last week's competition, but either way, he's gearing up for his best performance of the year. Boone's projection, 297 passing yards, 3 passing TDs. Other QBs to get started. Justin Fields and the Dolphins. Kirk Cousins in Commanders. Dante Foreman, the Panthers. In Bengals. Kevin C. Cox /sports/. Foreman has passed 100 fast yards in 2 consecutive competitions since the Christian McCaffrey trade, and is coming out of a 3-goal effort against the Falcons. Backcourt mate Chuba Hubbard missed last Sunday's game due to an ankle injury, and while this week has been limited so far, Foreman has done enough to bolster himself to advance as Carolina's premier ball carrier. Meanwhile, the Bengals, DJ wounded toe reader. Cincinnati has given Alvin Kamara for 99 fast yards, 50 yards and touchdowns to Tyler Allgeier, and 101 yards and 2 points to Nick Chubb in the last 3 games. The Panthers' offense should beat Foreman this week, making it a very engaging top RB2 for fantasy. Boone's projection, 93 running areas, 17 reception areas, 2 receptions, TD. Other RBs to get started. Cordarrelle Patterson /Tyler Allgeier and Chargers. Deion Jackson at Patriots. A.J. Dillon at Lions. Christian Kirk, Jaguars. Against Raiders. Don One More /sports/. Not as impressive as Kirk has been in a phenomenal opening month recently, seeing him average the 8th most fantasy score among buyers across 4 games. Despite cooling off a bit, he still reached 40 yards or scored a touchdown in each of his last 3 games. He also dominates goals for Jacksonville, seeing as the Jaguars have made 17 passes in their last 2 outings. With this kind of use, bigger stat lines are inevitable, especially against an average Raiders passing defense, who lost corner player Nate Hobbs on injury a few weeks ago. Feel free to include Kirk as a solid WR2 in your fancy lineup. Boone's projection, 79 reception areas, 6 receptions, TD. Other WRs to get started. DJ Moore at the Bengals. Josh Palmer on Falcons. Tyler Boyd vs Panthers. Gerald Everett, Chargers. In Falcons. Icon SportsWire/Icon SportsWire/. Everett has some notable splits in the stat lines this season depending on whether Donald Parham is active or sedentary. But this week, while he's tuned into Parham, it doesn't make any difference to Everett. The Chargers won't have 2 top picks at Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Wide field Josh Palmer is a recommended start as a low-end fantasy WR2, but there may be Everett challenges in the goals for the team lead. Los Angeles had 9 goals in its last game, and finished with 5 receptions and 63 yards. The Falcons also give up their 8th most fantasy spots to tight ends, making Everett a top 5 fantasy pick in their Week 9 position. Boone's projection, 72 reception areas, 6 receptions, TD. Other TEs to get started. Robert Tonyan at Lions. Tyler Higbee at Buccaneers. To sit. Tom Brady, Pirates. Etc. Rams. Mike Ehrman /sports/. The Pirates' attack hasn't found its rhythm this season, and this probably won't be the week when things get back on track. Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and the Rams' defense were the 10th toughest matchups for fantasy quarterbacks throughout the year. They have only allowed 3 passing touchdowns in their last 5 games. Brady doesn't have rushing stats to help keep his fancy figures up, so he needs to be successful on the air. That hasn't happened that often for the past 2 months. This should not be seen as one of the top 12 fantasy options for the game, but as a top-notch QB2. Boone's projection, 234 passing yards, TD, INT. Other QBs to sit. Derek Carr at Jaguar. Matthew Stafford at Buccaneers. Rams back area. In Pirates. Mike Ehrman /sports/. This may be a first, but it seems appropriate given all the questions about how to approach the Rams' comeback. While Tampa Bay ranks as the 6th hardest challenge for fantasy ball carriers, the Buccaneers have actually been weaker against the run in recent weeks. Unfortunately, that's not reason enough to enter a completely unpredictable depth chart. Darrell Henderson was placed behind undrafted rookie Ronnie Rivers in Week 8, at least in part due to an illness Henderson had been dealing with during the week. Rivers was unable to take advantage of this opportunity, and a committee was formed between himself, Henderson, and veteran red zone vulture Malcolm Brown. Former starter Cam Akers returned to the team this week, after the last 2 games, after a dispute over his use. His role in the advancing offense is unclear. Even though the Rams didn't trade him before the line, they still could have released him. Injured first-year pass catcher Karen Williams may soon play a role in the equation as well, but it doesn't look like a horseback ride. Besides what looks like a troubled RLA. The real problem for him may be an underperforming offensive line that is unable to operate in any backfield. Unless you're desperate, this is not the place to go to seek fancy value. All 5 Rams can be dropped in most fantasy leagues. Boone's projection, good luck. Other RBs to sit. Michael Carter / James Robinson vs Bills. Isaiah Pacheco / Clyde Edwards-Helaire vs Titans. Brian Robinson Jr. against the Vikings. Drake London, Falcons. In Chargers. Todd Kirkland /sports/. Sitting in London may seem obvious, but in a week of 6 team goodbyes, it's hard to rule out any proficient fantasy buyers. Unfortunately, the Falcons' first-round hit may no longer belong to that club. After starting his career with the stat lines 5-74-0, 8-86-1, and 3-54-1, the rookie didn't go 40 yards or find the finishing zone in 5 consecutive games. The flair is there, but thanks to the low-volume pass attack Arthur Smith deploys, their target goes in the wrong direction. Put London on the bench until things change in Atlanta. Boone's projection, 39 reception areas for receptions. Other WRs to sit. Robert Woods at Chiefs. Hunter Renfrow in Jaguars. Julio Jones vs Rams. TJ Hawkinson, Vikings. In Commanders. Nick Antea /sports/. Hawkinson's long-term fantasy stake isn't changing much after the Lions traded him to the Vikings. However, it is the Week 9 projection that is affected. He will learn of a new offense with Minnesota, and face a team of Commanders in 2022 who have given up on the least fantasy point to tight ends. Hawkinson will soon return to mid-range TE1 production, but it's unlikely to deliver this week. Boone's projection, 28 reception areas, 3 receptions. Other TEs to sit on. Dawson Knox at Jets. Cade Otton vs Rams. To hide. Jalen Warren Steelers. Justin K. Aller /sports/. Warren has been a consistent backcourt for the Steelers this season, and has even graduated to part-time flex status with double-digit PPR fantasy scores in 2 of his last 4 games. The unprepared rookie seems to have more juice at times than starter Najee Harris. It's surprising that Warren is still present in 94% of fantasy leagues. If Harris lost time, first year back, he would step in as a top 25 option in the position. Terrace Marshall Jr., Panthers. Todd Kirkland /sports/.